Hey everybody, Jessica Morrison here with Ferris Property Group in Indianapolis, Indiana. We have with us a very special guest, Lee Irwin with Edward Jones Financial. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So our audience today is excited to get to know you. For those who are local to Boone County, Leanne is your go-to financial advisor. But Lee, how did you get started in this industry? Like what attracted you to helping people in their finances?
I am so lucky. I grew up in a financial advisor's office. My dad has been with Edward Jones over 20 years in my hometown. So I grew up understanding what mutual funds were a lot sooner than the average person, which was really an exciting way to get to learn the principles of money. And then I became a CPA after college. I loved numbers and accounting and making everything work and building plans. And so that was just a perfect fit for me. And so my job was getting to know companies and looking at their balance sheets. And so I just got to see the best of both worlds on how to evaluate a good investment. But I realized my passion was in people and building relationships and truly helping people. And I realized that's what you get to do as an advisor. Is your job is to sit down with families and help make their lives better. So made the jump and came over, and Edward Jones needed help here in Zionsville. And I walked down Main Street to go to lunch, and I thought, this is where I'm meant to be. It feels like a small town, but it has a lot of resources, and it's just such a unique community that I love being part of Zionsville.
Yes, and you do such a good job with community involvement. I feel like ever since I've been involved in local Chamber of Commerce events or really any event that's got City of Zionsville or Boone County associated with it, I can usually expect to see your face, which is wonderful. But it's also good for, I think, the local community because not only are you actively involved, but you're being able to be exposed to other businesses and conversations that help you more thoroughly advise clients. So, how does a kind of walk us through the process? Because I think sometimes people think, oh, a financial advisor is a nice thing, but could I do it myself and save money? And then, yeah, just kind of run that with that question.
That's a perfect question. I think you and I were talking about this at one of the last events we were at, because being a DIY, there's nothing wrong with that. People redo their houses, they sell their own houses, they do their own investments. Some people just have an interest in it. And I usually say it's like anything else. If you've got the time, money, and the resources, you can do anything you want. It's just where you want to put them. And so we see a lot of clients doing it themselves, especially as they're just starting out. They do their 401k and they just are learning to invest and maybe a little bit on the side. Some people open and start to buy GameStop and do some of their individual investing. And then we find families come to us when they take stock of everything and realize, I don't actually feel like I have a plan. I have all these little buckets and pieces and I don't have anything that I know I'm working towards. And so it seems like that's where we step in, is to say, let's just pause and think about what you really want to do, what your goals are, and how we can help you make sure that these buckets are working as hard as you are.
Yeah, especially because, and not having personally worked with a financial advisor, so I get to be the guinea pig for all of you watching. But I think that there is definitely something to be said for how much time you have in a day. And like, is that financial advisor going to, like, how involved are you in someone's file, like from a stocks perspective? Is it kind of a set it and forget it from an investing, or are you reading reports to where, um, like for the example, the GameStop situation, um, did you try to help protect people accordingly? Like what does the involvement look like from a financial advisor once you have a client relationship with somebody? And then how do you help protect them from situations like GameStop?
That's a good question. I think everyone wants to know what that looks like working with us and how involved we're going to be in things. Like we've had clients ask, are you going to check my credit card statement and make sure I don't overspend? And so we put limits to everything, right? I do not want to know how much you spend on gas per month, but I'm sure going to help you set your budget if you need it and make sure that you're automatically investing everywhere you need to, and then your money is working in the right places for you. And then clients engage with us differently. Some people want some of that individual investment help where we're helping build that portfolio, and some are a little more hands off, like, I don't know, Lee, this is your world. You do what you think and keep me posted. So we try to meet clients where they're at. And I would say almost any financial advisor you call does a free initial assessment. It's unusual if they don't, just because I think our job is to get to know someone and figure out what they need, what we know we do well, and make sure we're a good fit before we proceed. So that's usually the easiest way is we just tell somebody, just come in and let's look at everything. Let's talk through it, figure out what we need and make sure that we can help. And if not, I'll find somebody who can. If somebody needs me to check their credit card statement, I'm probably not a good fit because I barely want to check my own, let alone make sure somebody else isn't spending too much going out to eat. So I think that's the perfect first way to interview somebody and do exactly what you're doing and say, how are you going to help me with this? And ask all those questions. So I would say that's the most common question we get from clients is, I've never worked with a financial advisor before. What can I even expect? And so I always say my goal is to make sure that you're maximizing your time and resources, and I'll be here along the way to help you do that. I find our families we work with say we want to focus on spending time with families and making sure we're living out our purpose in life, not worrying about our investments and finances. That's why we hired you. So my job is to pick it up from there and run with it.
Yes, I think that's a very good selling line, or most people would be nodding their heads and saying, yes, like I don't want to worry about that. But I think conversely too, you have the skeptics out there who are like, well, you got to make your money somehow. So how are you compensated as a financial advisor, and how is the Edward Jones model different than others in your industry?
That's a great question. That's something I think our industry is looking at because as we move as a community towards liking subscription-based models, we're still in the camp of other types of being compensated. And so I think our industry is looking at that and asking, how do clients want to pay for our services? So, a lot of lawyers charge on an hourly fee base. We don't do hourly. So how we interact personally is we either work with clients on a fee-based or a commission-based based on what they choose. So we look at their portfolio and help them figure out the most cost-efficient way to help them manage their investments. So we don't charge for helping plan their finances. That's just the basis. We just charge based on what they invest with us. So we think that's the fairest way is we just want to build a plan for you no matter what. And then we just get paid on those investments we choose along the way. So that's different. I think each firm does a little bit of difference, but what I really like about Edward Jones and why I'm here is because we're a partnership. So we're not traded. We have no job other than to help our clients. So our clients are the only people we answer to. And so we're a large company. We have 20,000 advisors and we're all across the United States. And yet we feel like a small company. We're right here in communities. We started in small farm towns. So we have the best of both worlds of these great resources, but the ability to act like a small individually owned company. So I feel like I've got this huge backing behind me while still getting to be hands-on and give back to my community. And that's what they value. So when we start, they say, we put you in a hometown so that you can get to know that community. So I jumped right in, and my grandparents always taught me to leave everything better than I found it. So that's just a personal principle, is to get involved in the community and give back and make sure that I'm getting to know the place that means so much to my clients.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think we share a similar motto in that aspect. For those who are, or sorry, different question. I think sometimes I've come across different, like at a networking event, new relationship, and kind of like how you can be a realtor part-time or real estate agent part-time. Does Edward Jones require financial advisors to be full-time?
We do, and there's a lot of regulation in our industry. You have to have a certain amount of licenses and continuing education, and truly it feels like a lifestyle as much as a full-time job. We just see these families through these really large, important changes, and I think it would be difficult to do on a part-time basis. Now, that being said, I get to set my own hours. So I think more so what we see not at Edward Jones, you definitely see people who invest part-time, right? And they try to do some things themselves, which I think is fine. It's up to your interest level. I just noticed that clients that come to us are so busy, they want somebody that's full-time, and here for all those changes in life, because when something happens, when you're going through a divorce or you lose a loved one or you're trying to retire or send your kid to college, these important pieces, you just want somebody whose job is to be there full time, making sure that they're behind you.
So if someone had a poor experience with a financial advisor, what are the common reasons for that? And what would you say to clients who are maybe open to starting a new relationship?
That is a great question. I find clients that come to us say, I tried this once and I just didn't like the experience, and they give up. And it makes me feel so bad that they had this terrible experience, because finances are the second most personal thing after your health. And so it is really hard to sit down with someone and share those intimate details with them and not to feel like you're being heard or valued. And so a lot of what we hear from clients that came from other places is they didn't feel like the person really listened to what they wanted, right? They came in with an agenda and they weren't really actively listening to make sure they're building something for that person. It wasn't personalized. We hear that it didn't feel like they were out for the client's interest, that maybe they were out for their own best interest. And again, that hurts to hear. And there's new regulation in our industry that we have to do what is in the best interest of clients and document that no matter what, which just makes me really happy that we're moving towards that for clients and making sure that that's a legal requirement. So I hope that means that clients don't have that experience as much going forward. And I think it's really complex to work through your finances, and it's important to work with somebody who's talented at taking things that are complex and making them simple and having really strong communication, because when something happens, it's real time, right? Like if you're going through something important and you want to bring your advisor in, hearing back from them a couple of weeks later just may not be enough. So really skilled communications. We hear that breakdown sometimes from clients that come from other places. They don't feel like they're have somebody who's on their team looking out for their best interest, and above all else, just going to be there to communicate and make things clear for them.
So what would you say then is, what should someone, I mean, you kind of answered this just now, but what would someone need to look for in a good financial advisor? What questions would you suggest that they ask? And um, what type of communication should they expect from their financial advisor?
Great question. I've got a good story to share. So I was working with someone who had new young investor, and they'd never worked with somebody before. And we did a Zoom and we're sharing our screens. And so as he went to share his screen, I could see, he still had the tabs up. He was Googling, what should you ask a financial advisor? What should you look for? And I thought that was great. It was kind of fun to get to see that it was important to him to do his research before he came to the meeting. And I think that's great. I mean, we have clients that they go out and they interview a couple people. And I think that makes sense. It's like dating. You want to make sure you understand what's out there and what your other choices are, and that you find somebody who's really a fit for you. Because I think like anything else, it's personality based. We had one client say, your credentials are great. I love all that. I like the company. I like all that. We just want to feel like we trust somebody. So for some people, it's not the resume, it's that feeling you get that you really connected with somebody, that you feel like there's somebody you can trust, that they're being authentic and trustworthy, and there's somebody you can bring on the team and know that they're going to be there for you. So my checklist would be, do your homework on the company and the cost and what you can expect for what you're paying. Each company does something different for what they charge. And so I think it's important that you know what you're getting for that and what kind of value they can provide. But at the same token, I think sitting down with somebody face to face or Zoom if possible in COVID, and just getting to know each other and making sure your communication styles match and that they ask questions that really make sure that they understand that they're getting to know you is important. Because everybody's so different, right? There's no two people's plans are the same.
This may or may not make sense, but do you find that, like, are there specialists for financial advisors in a sense of a type of investing strategy? So if you have, um, like maybe you're working with somebody who does a lot of property management versus someone who maybe has a family and 4 kids, like, do you think that it makes sense for someone when they're interviewing a financial advisor to find someone who's more of a specialist, or does that matter?
There are certain instances where it is helpful. So we've seen in our industry, there are certain advisors that specialize in helping dentists because they find their plans are more complex, or a lot of clients that invest in real estate, often they can find somebody who has experience in that and can help advise on exchanges and tax ramifications, and they have enough understanding to be able to add value and help them through that. So there is a level of specialization. You can ask somebody what their experiences are with those circumstances and what kind of clients they like to work with. I think that's a common question we get is, who do you serve? Who's your ideal client? Who do you like to work with? And for me, it's local families who are interested in spending more time with their families and less time worried about their finances, and that they're not the people that are going to check their accounts every day and be worried. They're focused on the long term and building a plan, and they want somebody to come alongside them and help them reach their goals. And so while that's not a specific job or age, I find that I can help a young couple building as well as I can help somebody transitioning to retirement. It's about who they are as people that matters more. So there definitely is specialization within the industry. But again, I'm a people person. I find that fit makes more difference than anything.
Yeah, I think you can have somebody who's a specialist, but if they're a jerk to you, it doesn't matter how special they are, they're just special in the wrong direction.
That's so true. That's so true.
Um, so kind of segueing into more current events,
Yeah.
what are you seeing in the finance investing market with COVID, and just kind of elaborate maybe on some recent events that um, you think are interesting or worth considering?
We are in a long-term growth cycle. So anybody who looks back 10 years is pretty happy with what they see. Things have been growing consistently. That's been really interesting. Obviously, there's been bumps along the road. I don't think anyone saw COVID coming. If they did, they should call me because I want their crystal ball. Right. So all of a sudden the market went down, and it went down quickly last year, but it recovered quickly. And I think that was a big surprise. I think even people who had been around the market a long time expected it to take a while to recover from such a life-changing, once in our generation event of a global pandemic. That quick recovery took a lot of people by surprise. And I think we're back to this place of asking the question, now what? Is it going to keep growing? Is a common question we get. And I think people are a little nervous, but I think that makes sense, right? We've been growing for a long time. At some point, we often see a pullback. It happens. It will happen. We don't say if your portfolio goes down, we say when your portfolio is down. And so I think what we're in is a really interesting time that, like anything else, we can't guess what's coming next. All we can do is build plans and make sure we're prepared for whatever comes next. There's all sorts of interesting things going on. Interest rates are low, which is a big impact on what you do in helping clients secure their ideal housing. Those low interest rates may not stay low. If those get risen, what does that mean? So we hear right now a lot about rising interest rates and the bond environment, what that means for stock market. And so I think there's going to be a lot of changes going forward. New political administration often means tax changes. That's a big question we got from clients is with the new administration, what should we be preparing for as far as taxes? We've had lower tax brackets for a while. That obviously can and will evolve. And so as we work through all these changes, we just make a checklist individualized to each client, say, as each thing happens, here's what we're going to do to be ready for it and what you can expect when and if those things come. But I'm really encouraged. We have people who are more interested in investing than ever. I think that's a great part, right? We mentioned GameStop earlier. That's kind of a thing we laugh about. What a crazy thing that Reddit is informing the stock market. That doesn't always happen. Not something I saw coming. But interestingly, it got people talking about investing that don't normally. And I think anything that brings more investors to the table and gets people interested is positive. So I took it as a great sign that we had a couple of people come in and say, I know I'm not equipped to do this myself, but I'm excited about starting. And I think that's important. Clients' kids were calling in. That was really exciting just to see that they want to start being part of it, even if they don't know what that looks like or means yet. So I think we're going to have a lot more people coming to the table with all these current events. The economic cycle is so interesting, but it often repeats itself. So I always say we're going to be ready for whatever comes next, no matter what that is.
Yes. So what would you say are like three things, like let's say that somebody lost their job due to COVID and they are trying, like, I feel like right now you are either thriving, like you have good job security, or you're really struggling, and my heart goes out to you. And as I said in my last video, if any of you are looking for work or need to open up your network, please feel free to contact myself or Lee. We have a great network here in Indianapolis. We'd be more than happy to help you try and find some security for employment and income. But, Lee, obviously there is a significant group of people who have been financially impacted by COVID. How are you advising people to help protect their family in both the short and the long term?
One of the most common things that is talked about in finances is an emergency fund. And this is why, so we've had tons of clients talk about that, and that even if they didn't lose their job, the financial comfort of knowing that they have a certain amount of months covered if they do because of the plan that we set up is really impactful. So I guess my 3 checklist items are: have your emergency fund match your plans, right? Which means a certain amount of months worth of spending. We usually do 3 to 6, depending on the family. Behind that, we normally have a backup emergency fund for families here. So it's outside of their bank, but it's ready to go if we need to tap into it. And then we like to automate contributions where possible so that families are always saving, whether that's into your 401k or Roth IRA. Having automatic contributions and make sure you're always building towards a plan is helpful so that in the event the worst case happens and you have a major health issue, major medical bill, you lose your job, you're impacted by something you didn't see coming, you're not surprised by it because you already have things in place to make sure that you're going to be okay.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So, again, like, can't stress enough the importance of an emergency fund. And obviously, if you're in an emergency and you don't have one, then that's not exactly helpful. But do you know if there's any resources right there or right in our local community or maybe even nationally outside of the grace period that people have with forbearance that people should look into for maybe meeting their more short-term financial needs?
Student loans have been evolving obviously over time. So a lot of families we work with, their student loan balances have grown. Their kids are taking on student loans in a way that we didn't in the past. So the forbearance is a great thing that you mentioned, that student loans have been really flexible the last year. There was COVID relief sent out. So our government really stepped in a big way in the last year to help during COVID, try to ease some of those burdens. But I would say the only thing I can suggest is getting ahead of it and having your own plan in place that if something were to happen, just stashing up that little bit of money goes a really long way. And if somebody's in a really tough spot immediately, I always say call a loved one that you admire and respect and ask their input on it because they probably know you better than anybody else to know what you could do to be successful. So it's always shocking when we suggest that. Families kind of laugh and they're like, oh, you mean I have to call my parents about this? Or, I have to call my sister and let her in on this? And we laugh and say, who better, right? Who knows you better than a loved family member that can give you advice on, especially one that you admire and that's clearly done a good job for themselves. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think it's harder to put a front on, like, in front of family. Like, they've seen you on your worst days and they know your personality, strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, that's, I think, for anything too, whether you're considering a new career or opportunity. And obviously, you want those relationships to be healthy and constructive criticism. But um, that's a really good piece of advice. I hope people take advantage of that. I would love to, since you did mention the government printing more money, get your feedback on currency because we've also seen a huge spike in investing in crypto. So, what are your thoughts?
We've had tons of clients ask about this, from those who say, what the heck is it? To those who say, are we supposed to be investing in it? I absolutely think that there's going to be a future where there's different ways we exchange money. I mean, I think about how much Venmo has changed things and how revolutionary that was, not to be having to split up cash at a restaurant when you go out to eat with a group of people and you could quickly and easily exchange money between them. I think PayPal has obviously come a really long way. These monetary exchanges are going to continue to be a big part of our world. Is Bitcoin the way that we will exchange money in the future and there's not going to be a dollar bill? I doubt it. I think there is going to be a lot of automation. Even the automated clearinghouse, ACH, is how we currently, major financial institutions, send money between each other. That was created a really long time ago and hasn't gone through a lot of updates since. That could be rewritten and updated and modernized. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes. We often see out of recessionary times, like out of 2008, some of the world's biggest companies launched, and we see a lot of innovation. So I'm excited to see what comes out of a global pandemic and some of these changes that are going to happen. Again, I don't personally invest in Bitcoin because I can't put my hands around it and understand it. And I have no guarantee that it's going to be part of our future, but I'm excited to see what does come out. And I think that's a good thing to keep an eye on, is as currency evolves, what that looks like and how we can definitely equalize it and make it easier for people to have access to funds.
Yes, I think that from the research that I've done on it, you kind of have two teams of thought, generally speaking. One is if you're team crypto, you're kind of betting on the death of the US dollar, and that's super pessimistic. But there's thankfully attributing to lots of stimulus printing. It's like the value of the dollar is going down. So, and there's a fixed rate of what Bitcoin is available. So there's a lot of logic to support that argument there theoretically. But then on the other end, it's again, you have the camp of I want to see it, I want to touch it, I can have physical dollars in my safe. It's almost like there's two different groups of people. And I think from what, and the discussion's actually Clubhouse of all places, I've heard people kind of be more in favor of crypto is the younger generation, because they are, especially like gamers, like there's digital currency within games. And so I think there's more exposure or more familiarity to it because of a digital based lifestyle to where they see the value versus maybe someone who's older or just has a different philosophy. So yes, I don't want to say that one is better than the other or anything, but I think you're right on the money that it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yep. I try not to speculate on anything I don't know. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and we'll be part of that ride no matter what that looks like. But as of now, I am just really glad that we live in a world where so much changes and evolves and gets better over time. And so that's been an exciting thing to see, is that think about all the change that we've been through in our world, and the stock market still exists and some of these fundamentals still exist. People still keep an emergency savings account. So I still go back to those basics, never go out of style.
So what would you say are, if someone's trying to become, like you mentioned earlier, you had people calling in, they're interested in learning more about how to become an investor. And obviously reaching out to you would be a really good recommendation, but are there publications or news sources that you suggest people kind of put their ear to the ground to? Because just because we have the internet doesn't mean that you're going to be reading the right sources of information. So what do you recommend people read or get connected with in their journey?
That's a great question. I love Barron's and Wall Street Journal. There's a great podcast called Wealth Track, Consuelo Mack, that's really good and educational around this. And so we encourage clients, educate yourself, learn, especially earlier investors. I think they want to just start to understand and read what's going on. And again, I think those resources are great for that. There's great books out there on the basics of investing that I'm happy to recommend. So if anyone has questions, definitely reach out to me and I can give you some starter materials just to get you launched. The Edward Jones website has a lot of great articles as well, just on some of the basics. Why fund a Roth IRA? How much life insurance do I need? How much money should I be targeting to have so I can retire? So I definitely check out edwardjones.com and search some of those articles on some of those basic topics.
Excellent. Now, we are coming up on our time. Do you have any last piece of advices or recommendations for people who maybe give a piece of advice for those who are new and those who are seasoned?
I'd say if you're a new investor, the hardest part about investing is staying focused on the long term. You get excited, you like to see the day-to-day fluctuations, but it is not betting. There is nothing speculative about it. You are putting pieces in place consistently for the long term to build wealth. And so learning to have that long-term mindset is probably the hardest part about investing, but what our most seasoned investors have had the most success with. So starting with a long-term mindset, if you're new, makes a huge difference. Ask what you can expect over 10 years, not 10 months. If you're a seasoned investor, I would say look at the season of life you're in and ask what you want for the next chapter and make sure you have a plan to get there. I think it gets hard, especially we see people who are high up in their career and they're doing well and things are autopilot on track. Sometimes just haven't stopped to take stock and say, where am I? Am I really happy with where I'm at? Or is there something else that I haven't been thinking of that I should be planning for? And so I think that comes for anything that you're in. It's just taking a breath to say, am I happy? What do I need? What would the most perfect picture look like? And is there something I can change to get there? And so I think that's what meeting with us allows. And sitting down with a financial advisor gives you that excuse to do that. And so clients often ask, how often are we going to meet? And I usually laugh and say, however often it takes, but at a minimum, we have to sit down once a year and just take stock of everything. Take that pause to say, where are we? Where are we headed? And are we happy with what that looks like?
I love it. So good. I hope you all have found this to be incredibly valuable. Lee, assuming that you're going to have a flooded inbox of inquiries, what is the best way for people to connect with you?
I am, of course, on LinkedIn and Facebook, EJ Advisor Lee Irwin. You can also visit my website, edwardjones.com/Lee-Irwin, and you can send me a message through there. So if you just Google my name, Lee Irwin, Edward Jones, you'll find all of our resources to be able to get in touch with us. And we're happy to answer any questions. And Jessica's been a great resource. We've gotten to know each other, like we said, just being involved in our local community and both having servant hearts to give back. We just kept seeing each other at event over event. And so you've got a really great resource here for all things real estate and all things financial.
I love it. All right, everybody, I hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.